Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us. It's super exciting to interview you as a colleague, and I also know you wear multiple hats on campus, and I love the fact that you're also an alum of Suffolk. So it's like I get a two for one.
Yeah.
Interview an alum who is an esteemed colleague as well, and shout out, I remember to you for also being a recipient during the Black Excellence Award. So I feel like there's a lot that I know and happy to share that with our campus community. So everyone, my name is Adesua Igbeneweka. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Director for Career Equity and Access on our team here at the Career Center. And I am joined with by my colleague, Adeleke.
Hi everyone, my name is Adeleke Yowa. I am a grad fellow here at the Career Center and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So without further ado, we'll get started with our questions, Jennifer, and that would lead to your introduction. So please tell us about your background and how you identify.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Blakely. I'm the Assistant Director for Operations and Strategic Outcomes at the Sawyer Library at Suffolk. I've been working here. It'll be 10 years in June. So it's kind of exciting for me. So my background, let's see. My family history is a little bit complicated, so I won't go into all of it, but I do identify as biracial, but I would also say Black, depending on the circumstances. My mother was white and my father was Black. And growing up where I went to college, identity was a huge thing, and being biracial was actually a problem there. So saying I was Black was a lot easier. And so I did that for a long time until probably like full adulthood after college, when I got to a place where I felt like it was, I don't know, I think there were more people who identified as biracial in the world. And so it sort of became a thing that seemed easier for people to accept you saying. So it kind of, like I said, depending on the circumstances, how I will identify in that regard. But I am also proud to say that I'm Black as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So the next question we have here is there's no denying identity's impact on one's professional life. So how have aspects of identity impacted your career?
Librarianship is really, really white. So being Black in librarianship means I'm generally one of the only people of color in my spaces. Certainly once I moved into management, for sure. At that level, I rarely ever see another person of color. So it's definitely been a significant sort of factor for me in being that like lone voice, making sure that we're, being equitable in our services. And sometimes it's a little bit lonely.
Absolutely. I understand when you are one of the onlys, how that can impact you.
Yeah.
As we're celebrating Black History Month,
Mhm.
can you share what it means to you and why or if the Heritage Month holds any significance?
I actually love Black History Month. As you know, I have been helping with the Black History Trivia for a few years. And I find I always learn something that I did not know myself about sort of how rich Black history is as a part of American history. So I think that's what I enjoy the most, is like being like, oh, I didn't know a Black person invented, whatever the new thing is. Like I learned the folding bicycle the other day. So I feel like, I'm always surprised to learn different things. And so I think the great thing about Black History Month is it gives other people an opportunity also to learn that it really isn't confined to just, Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, like the few people that in America who are taught in schools, that it's so many more things that impact people's daily lives. like the street light and different things that if it weren't for Black people, those things wouldn't exist and how our lives would be impacted. So I think for me, that's it. It's great to have the month to make sure that we're sort of giving people some extra time to spend on those aspects. I wish it was longer, of course, but I do think it's really important to have some time to make sure that those things are pointed out and shared, with the broader community.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Yeah, so how has your racial and cultural identity encouraged and empowered you in your line of work?
It's an interesting question. I think one of the biggest things is it's given me the opportunity to sort of be a voice and say, like, the library is for everyone. It's a place where, we are not going to, give any special or less special privilege to someone based on their identity. So we want it to be a place that's welcoming. And so I feel like I'm always able to use like where I come from in my personal experience with libraries as a means to say, like, let's make sure that we're considering people from all different backgrounds and making sure services and collections and all those kinds of things are as broad as possible to make sure that it is the welcoming place that it's supposed to be. Not to say that other colleagues don't have that in the beginning of their thought process, but I feel like I represent that more just because it's personal to me. So I try to use my identity in that way.
I think sometimes when you are able to use your identity to the advantage of everyone, it's always sort of a blessing because there's someone else who's always impacted by that, and just by being you in the space that you are in. So I think that leads to my next question of how would you describe your role as the Assistant Director for Operations and Strategic Outcomes at the Mildred F. Sawyer Library?
So it's a lot. The title's a mouthful in itself, but so the primary part of my responsibilities is I oversee the Access Services Department. So it's the circulation desk, interlibrary loan. So that sort of frontline contact that students have with the library. And one of our primary roles is lending reserve books and laptop computers and phone chargers and things like that. So we have a lot of very regular contact with students. And I do the hiring for the staff in that department as well as our student assistants. And so I do make a really concerted effort to make sure that as best as possible, we are representing a lot of different aspects of the Suffolk community. And then on top of that, the operations piece of my responsibilities means the facility, when we're open, maintaining, everything to be safe and clean and those kinds of things. So I do a lot of like furniture acquisition and lots of maintenance requests, and making sure Gregory, who's the library director, comes to me when he has, questions or concerns about the library's functioning. And then the strategic outcomes piece is a lot around, fitting in with Suffolk University's strategic plan, as well as the library's strategic goals, but that gives me the opportunity to be on a lot of external committees, RAM Inclusion Week planning, First Gen Student Week planning, the Racial Equity and Justice Campus Committee. So I do a lot of the sort of DEI work for the library, making sure that we're included in those conversations because we are sort of the center. Everyone's welcome in our space and can use it without having a need for something, you know what I mean? So we're not a service-oriented place, so you can just come in and use our space. And so we're trying to make sure that everyone is aware of us and that we're collaborating with as many campus partners as possible in that way. So I have my hands in a lot of different areas around campus and within the library.
If I could just pick on something that you mentioned, the other collaborations that you lead because of your role and the partnerships on campus. Could you say a little more about your connection to Ambassador for Inclusion?
Yeah. So as part of the Racial Equity and Justice Campus Committee, we created the Ambassador for Inclusion program. And the idea behind that program was that DEI training, it's hard to do it as just a one-off, right? Like, you sit in an hour and a half meeting, some person talks at you, you get up and you leave and kind of go back to your daily life in a way that it may not be as impactful as it could be. So the idea of it is it's usually a 5 or 6 week program where each week you're reading or watching something and reflecting on it, as well as pairing with another person and having conversations that may be difficult, but it gives you an opportunity to, in a confidential sort of safe space, talk about some of the things that are coming up for you, or you've all of a sudden become aware of a dimension of diversity that you weren't aware of before, and like how you can sort of bring yourself around to like adjusting your thinking about something maybe that you had a bias about before that you didn't know that you had. So we really feel like it's a great program that will really, we're happy every time that we get a new cohort of 25 or 30 people who come to it and say, my coworker told us about it and it's really great. But we're really hoping that it's giving people more of a chance to like sit with these concepts within themselves and to start at whichever point they are on their DEI journey. So if you're a very early beginner, then you're hopefully moving up. But if you would consider yourself to be a person who's, had a lot of experience with DEI, we're hoping that you're going to still find something from the program that you can, broaden your own understanding and learning from. So I really love the AFI program.
Yes, I love the AFI program too. As a grad of AFI 1.0,
Yeah.
I still got to go back and finish my 2.0, but
Yeah.
I can say that I was, really impressed that Suffolk had the space and you helped curate a lot of the content. And I was also inspired because that also played a role in our creating inclusive allyship training for students. To also be able to increase their awareness and engagement around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you. Adeleke?
So it's thrilling to know that you are a Suffolk alum and now you work at the university. And I would like to know, can you describe what has been the biggest success story in your career to date?
I don't know. This question was hard for me. I feel like it was probably, so I came to librarianship late in my career, or like in my life. I have 2 kids, they're 26 and 24, and I stayed home with them for about 7 years when they were little. And I took a job working in the library part-time as a page, which meant, putting the books back on the shelves. And I fell in love with it. And I had always been a huge library user, big reader as a child, spent a lot of time in the library. But I got there as, I was in my 30s and I was like, what have I been doing with my whole life? Like, why haven't I been working in libraries all this time? So I went back to school and got my master's in library science. And my first full-time job out of school was just at a library in a community outside of Detroit, Michigan. And the director there retired. And she was like, are you going to apply for my job? And I was like, I've only been out of library school for a year. What do you mean? Like, I couldn't possibly be the director of a library. And she was like, no, I really think you'd be great at it. And so I went for it and I did get that job. So I wasn't a new grad in the sense that I didn't have working experience. I wasn't, 24 and just out of college or something, but it really felt like a huge accomplishment for me to get to, be the head of a library on my own in such a short career span. So I would say that would probably be the biggest success.
And I'm also glad that, the director encouraged you to
Yeah.
apply, knew that you were capable of doing that. And I think sometimes we need those champions and cheerleaders that are willing to push us to our great capacity.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that, the field of library science and librarians is not very colorful as our society is. And so I am curious, what are some changes you hope to see in your industry or workplace that improve the experience or representation of Black people?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I hope that seeing people like myself in this role, and that hiring student assistants to work in the library will get more people to love libraries and understand that it's a lot more than just like I love to read, as a career, that it's a lot about helping people get answers to their questions and connecting them with resources and purchasing those resources to make sure that they're available for students and or, if you're in the public library for the public to use. But it is really about making librarianship known to people as a possible career. And I think that is still, I think people still think all we do is tell people to be quiet, a little bit. So it doesn't have necessarily like the appeal for as a career. And I think that there's still a lot of work to be done as far as that goes. But I think students aren't seeing Black librarians or brown librarians, and so they don't see that as a possibility, for themselves as their career.
Thank you. Earlier you gave us like a peek into how your career started. So reflecting on your career, can you tell us what was most helpful in your professional success?
Yes, I thought about that a lot after I got your question, and I really think, so the American Library Association has something called the Spectrum Scholarship Program, and it's for people of color to get. So when you're getting your master's in library science, it's a scholarship, but it's also got, they put you in a cohort, and then they take you right before the annual conference that year. You meet and have like a mini pre-conference together, and you meet other prominent librarians of color in the field. And it really created, sort of like this small, like I said, it's like a cohort, but it created a lot of relationships, and also gave me this really great opportunities. At the time, like I said, I went to library school in Michigan. I had the opportunity to come to like an exploration of academic libraries event at Harvard and MIT. And Spectrum brought us here and put us up, and Harvard and MIT had 2 full days planned for us to meet with their staff and talk about their facilities. And that really gave me insight into working in an academic library. And I hadn't been at the time. I was working in a public library, but it was always my sort of dream to work in an academic setting. And so I felt like that the Spectrum Scholarship Program and the cohort of people that I met there, and sort of the larger group of people that have previously been in that cohort, or in a cohort together, has really been it's like people to look up to. And I see other people who I know are in that program and they're being successful, and it sort of gives you that drive to sort of keep going in your own career. So yeah, I think that's probably the most helpful thing, is being able to see other people who are doing what you want to do and them being successful, and knowing that you could call on them if you had questions or whatever, to reach out.
That sort of answers a little of my next question, so I'll rephrase it, because you just shared that being part of that program
Yeah.
gave you exposure to other professionals, to build community with, folks to look up to. So if you could tell me, like, what do you think is the most impactful, or maybe not just one, maybe a couple of things that's most impactful when you have a mentor?
I really think it's about having someone who believes in you, first and foremost. And so when you go to them and say, what do you think about me applying for this opportunity or going back to grad school, or whatever, decision is kind of on your, as you're looking ahead in your career plan. I think knowing somebody believes in you is probably the most important thing. But then they hopefully are bringing their sort of wealth of experience and how they've tackled issues and problems and things that have come up, that they can give you, some advice. I think advice is always helpful. Everyone always has questions, before they undertake a new step in their life. And so having those two things, I think, someone to bounce off your ideas. But I know growing up, I didn't have you know, someone who believed in me. And so I think someone that believes in you is probably the most important thing for me in mentorship.
Appreciate that.
Similar to the question just asked. Now we just want to look at social capital and the importance of social capital. So how did social capital, connection, or relationships with people both within and beyond your professional setting influenced your career and success?
Yeah, I think like I said, I kind of grew up, I remember having a guidance counselor tell me like, you couldn't get into that college, you know, and so like you should change your expectations about yourself. And so I really do wish that that I'd had sort of encouragement earlier on, but as I said, when I got into some of those first early library jobs, and I had bosses who were like, you should definitely go to grad school, you'd be great at it, you know. So I don't know that I ever had like one mentor for my life, but I've been lucky enough to work for people who saw my potential and wanted to nurture that. And so I think it was those relationships and those people who were saying, I would love to help you in whatever way I can. And like I said, I think you'd be great at being a librarian or being a library director or, moving on to the next thing in your career, that those types of relationships. And then my husband is also very supportive of me and believes in my potential. And so I feel like I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by people at different various stages of my life that helped sort of build me up to a place where I felt like I could do things that I didn't think I could do when I was younger.
I love hearing about success stories, and sometimes I know that we do have a tendency to say talking about success, which is great. I love everybody who has a success story, but I've also learned a lot from how people navigated challenges when they found themselves in one. So I'm curious, can you describe some challenges or even setbacks that you've experienced in your career path and how you've bounced back or moved forward from this experience?
So before I came to Suffolk, actually, I had what I thought was a great job opportunity. I won't people can figure it out from my LinkedIn if they want, where I worked before this, but the person who was my boss and I, when I first started, we got along great. And, I was really excited to take on a challenge of a much larger staff and a union environment. So there were a lot of things for me to learn. And I thought that they saw my potential and thought I could do it. And later found out that was not the case. And it was very, very rough. Yeah, it was I had a huge staff. So there was a lot of pressure from, to like maintain my department and do my job. And then I had all this pressure coming down from my supervisor, who was making me feel very incompetent and unable to function, in my role. And so I knew that I had to leave, and it was very difficult I had a lot of very great coworkers. I really liked my actual job. But I just, having a manager who makes you feel bad about yourself is terrible. And so I started looking for jobs, and it took a while to find one. But I did get lucky enough to get my position at Suffolk. But I think I learned a lot about management from that. So I feel like I took away the friendships and the experience of the work, but I also took away the sense of like, I would never be a manager who treated people in that way. So like you sort of tuck that away in the back of your minds. Like I hated being made to feel that way. So I wouldn't want to make someone else feel that way. And so I feel like, when I moved to my position here at Suffolk, that I wanted to make sure that I was a manager that made people feel valued and, allowed them to live up to the potential that they brought to the position and that kind of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly or not, but I do feel like, I know it's hard to like let go of something, but I feel like when you get to that point where it's terrible and you can't see a way forward, that changing your job or it sometimes is necessary as a means to like free up your mental health, get to a better place.
There's this lady on LinkedIn who I admire so much, and I think her something she put on her profile is like, be the person you wanted when you were younger. And
Yeah.
I always read that and I would always laugh because like I always tell students that, the professionals you meet today, the CEOs and all those people in high places were once in your shoes.
Yes.
So don't think they woke up and they just, became these powerful people. So
Right.
sometimes, knowing that you've gained some status in life, society, I think it's always important to be able to look back and say, if I were younger, what would that be like for me? And so for you, it's a case of like, I had this experience that I would not want someone else to experience that, and I can create an inclusive workplace. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
To be included
Yes,
in
exactly.
the workplace and valued.
Yeah.
So it's a tough experience for you, but I'm glad that what comes out of it is you building inclusive spaces for others. And I mean, you've been here the longest now, so
Yeah,
I'll win.
that's true. Yeah.
So speaking about younger self, so if you could give yourself or your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, that's actually easy for me. I would say believe in yourself. I really, like I said, that guidance counselor that told me that I couldn't, like, I was like, all right, well, I guess I can't. And like, that really it hindered me for a long time in my life. So sorry, dang it. So yeah, that's what I would say. Believe in yourself.
Well, knowing what you do on this campus for us, creating inclusive environment, being a part of the leadership team for AFI, being a part of the leadership team for the library, and also being the trivia master of Black History Month. We are honored. I am looking forward to this year's trivia.
Yeah. Working
Just
on the
make sure
questions now.
yeah, make sure the questions are the ones that, I would come out ahead this year. I'm looking forward to redeeming myself this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to make them not too hard. So we'll see.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be very appreciated. But we love the learning. We love your contribution. And I also do want to thank you that for a good number of years, you also led the Black faculty and staff employee resource group here at Suffolk. That's how I met you on Zoom. Because you helped create a space that was very impactful for someone like me who joined the campus during the pandemic. Knowing that, there was this place I could just come in and hang out once a month with other folks was very impactful for me. So thank you. And I just want to say we are grateful that you shared your story with us.
Well, thank you for asking me. I appreciated it. I was glad to do it.